If you really know the background of who Jay Wright is, I'm really a criminal trying not to be one. I'm so honest about it. I've been arrested for 26 violent felonies.
Oh my God.
All violent.
Who are you fighting?
Everyone. You're really obsessed. You're not gonna do nothing. You could keep waving that little gun, making all them little threats. You're not gonna do nothing. You're not gonna do nothing. You and your little boyfriend ain't gonna do nothing over there. Ooh, y'all got guns. Ooh. Now that's you.
On the afternoon of May 9th, 2021, Mother's Day turned into a day of horror in Davenport, Iowa. Inside a quiet home on Calvin Street, an argument escalated into violence, and within minutes, a young woman's life was gone. She was 20-year-old Willana Bibs, an aspiring singer who had moved to Atlanta chasing her dream of music. But instead of finding stardom, she found herself trapped in the grip of an older man who promised her the world and gave her nothing but control and fear. That man was Justin Wright, a multi-platinum songwriter with credits alongside some of the biggest names in hip-hop. To the outside world, he was successful, but behind closed doors, he was manipulative, violent, and jealous. And on that Mother's Day, after accusing Willana for a dispute involving just $70, he pulled out a gun and ended her life. The crime stunned her family, devastated her community, and revealed the disturbing reality of a man many in the industry once celebrated. This is the life and death of Willana Simone Bibs. This tragic incident occurred in the city of Davenport, Iowa, USA, which is a riverside city with a relaxed Midwestern charm, neat residential neighborhoods, green public spaces, and a friendly, close-knit community that embodies that classic Iowa nice attitude. In 2021, however, Davenport faced notable safety challenges. The city recorded hundreds of violent incidents, from assaults to robberies, and thousands of property crimes, including thefts and vehicle break-ins, placing it among the highest in the state per capita. Although she lost her life in the city, it was not where Willana started it. Willana was born on September 9, 2000 in Chicago, Illinois, the youngest child of Thomas and Cassandra Bibs. With 3 older siblings, she grew up surrounded by a family who adored her. From the beginning, she was known for her warm smile, her forgiving nature, and her uncanny ability to make others laugh. When she was still young, her family relocated to Durham, North Carolina, a city where she would spend much of her childhood and teenage years. Durham was home, but Willana's spirit was never confined to a single place. She was adventurous, social, and full of ideas about what her life could become. She attended high school in Durham, where she quickly earned a reputation for being friendly, playful, and always surrounded by people. Friends said she had a silly side that made her the kind of person others wanted to be around. Teachers noticed her determination and kindness, often commenting that she was a bright spot in the classroom. But what set Willana apart most was her passion for music. She loved to sing, and from childhood, her voice drew attention. Her family recalled how she sang constantly, treating every room like a stage. She wasn't just talented, she was ambitious. She wanted to make her mark in the music industry and was willing to put in the work to achieve it.
Baby, I'm just too G for you. Baby, I'm just too straight. I can even roll these beats. Everybody notice me. I can even go to sleep. I'm rolling on the beat. They try to get me. I got on my knees like Jesus, please. You don't believe in Jesus, so why you got a Jesus piece? If you wanna leave, just leave. But you gotta lie to me. Even the blind can see that you ain't gonna ride for me. You ain't been
Her mother, Cassandra, described her as someone who forgave easily, never holding grudges, and always believing in the good in others. That compassion made her loved, but it also made her vulnerable. But music wasn't all she talked about. She dreamed of becoming a singer, but also talked about pursuing nursing or law, careers where she could make a difference. That versatility spoke to her hunger for knowledge and her drive to do something meaningful. And Willana was already making small waves. In 2019, her confidence and stage presence carried her to the Miss Black Georgia USA pageant, where she competed and proudly represented herself and her community. She was also venturing into entrepreneurship, dabbling in fashion and makeup lines while still chasing music. To those who knew her, she seemed unstoppable, a young woman determined to succeed in more than one lane. She soon started to make big moves to make these dreams come true. But like many with big dreams, Willana believed Atlanta, Georgia was the place where her future could bloom. Known as the Hollywood of the South, Atlanta was a hub for rising talent, especially in music. It was there, around 2019 or 2020, that Willana relocated, believing it was her chance to connect with industry figures who could help her launch her career. It was also there that she met the man who changed everything. Justin Wright, who was more than a decade older, at 31, was already established in the music world. He had founded Camp Entertainment Worldwide in 2011 and was credited with collaborations with Timbaland, Rick Ross, Future, DJ Khaled, Bow Wow, Omarion, Cash Doll, and Nipsey Hussle. On paper, he was exactly the kind of mentor and partner a young singer like Willana might hope to meet. Eventually, their connection quickly got a new meaning. It turned romantic. To Willana, it must have felt like a dream come true, a chance at both love and a career path intertwined. He promised her success, told her he could open doors in the industry, and encouraged her to trust him. Her family recalls her being excited and hopeful, describing her plans and her new relationship with optimism. But beneath the glamour and charm was a darker reality. Justin Wright carried a troubling history. Court records and his own admissions revealed a long list of violent charges, more than 25 arrests throughout his life, many connected to fights, weapons, and volatile behavior.
If you really know the background of who Jay Wright is, I'm really a criminal trying not to be one. I'm so honest about it. I've been arrested for 26 violent felonies.
Oh my God.
All violent.
Who are you fighting?
Everyone. I love to fight. It's my favorite thing to do. That is my problem. And I'm one of those people that really stand.
You are not a true light-skinned person because they don't be trying to get dirty and fight.
I am light-skinned with dark-skinned tendencies.
Okay, I got you.
I don't act nothing like anybody else that look like me.
I
like
follow
to fight.
you.
I do all bad things on accident, but it's because I stand for things though, so.
Okay, I can see that.
I'm gonna protect my family and my friends at all costs, no matter what that means for me. Absolutely. And I really stand by that. So if I gotta go to jail behind that, die behind that, or kill behind that, I'm a man and I really stand on that.
In podcasts and interviews, Justin even bragged about his violent tendencies, describing himself as someone who loved to fight and couldn't escape his own destructive patterns. For Willana, the reality of who he was became clearer the longer she stayed, and things were not looking good. Friends and family later described how Justin began to isolate her, restricting her contact with loved ones, monitoring her communications, and even persuading her to cut off social media. He became possessive, manipulative, and controlling. There were troubling incidents that showed just how unsafe the relationship was evolving. During one altercation inside a car, Willana was so frightened by his aggression that she leapt from the moving vehicle, injuring herself in the fall. She called her father, crying and desperate. Her parents urged her to come home, warning her about the dangers of staying with Justin. But like many victims caught in cycles of abuse, leaving wasn't simple. Justin held power, not just emotional, but also professional. He dangled the possibility of fame and career success in front of her while simultaneously threatening and belittling her. At just 20 years old, Willana was torn between her dreams, her fear, and her hope that things might change. Sadly, they did not. On Mother's Day, May 9th, 2021, Willana started her morning by texting her mother, Cassandra. In her message, she told her mom she loved and appreciated her and wished her a happy holiday. It was the kind of message every parent cherishes, a reminder of the bond between mother and daughter. Then something strange happened. But just hours later, Cassandra noticed several missed calls from Willana, 4 in a row. When she tried to call back, there was no answer. Cassandra's heart sunk. She knew her daughter was with Justin, and she knew their relationship had been volatile. Meanwhile, in Davenport, Iowa, Willana and Justin were at his cousin's home on Calvin Street, visiting relatives for a birthday celebration. At some point during the day, an argument broke out. Reports later revealed it centered around $70, money Justin accused Willana of taking from him. Neighbors heard raised voices, followed by a single devastating gunshot. The call to Davenport police came in at 1:25 p.m. on May 9, 2021. When officers arrived, they quickly realized this was no ordinary disturbance. Entering the home, they found a young woman lying unresponsive on the floor. She had suffered a fatal gunshot wound, and despite immediate attempts at resuscitation, paramedics could not bring her back. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The victim was identified as 20-year-old Willana Bibs. The promising singer, daughter, and sister, who had only hours earlier texted her mother a cheerful holiday message, was now gone. But who could have done this, and why? They came close to this answer when they found someone new. Inside the home, officers also found Justin Wright, the 31-year-old Atlanta-based songwriter who was Willana's boyfriend. Unlike so many murder investigations that begin with the search for the suspect, police didn't have to look far. The man believed to have pulled the trigger was standing in the very house where her life had ended. Justin was taken into custody without incident. Authorities noted that he was present when officers arrived and did not attempt to flee. To investigators, this wasn't just shocking, it was infuriating.
20-year-old Willana Bibs was shot and killed in Davenport on Mother's Day.
Her boyfriend, 31-year-old Justin Wright, is facing a first-degree murder charge in her death.
The man with industry accolades, credited on songs for some of the biggest names in hip-hop, had just extinguished the life of a woman barely out of her teens. But even with Justin in custody, many questions remained.
What had happened in those final minutes? Was this a crime of passion, a calculated act, or something else entirely? Detectives immediately began piecing together the timeline. Witnesses confirmed that Willana and Justin had traveled to Davenport from Atlanta to spend time with his relatives. On the surface, it looked like a family visit, but behind closed doors, their relationship was unraveling. Family members of Willana told investigators she had confided in them about Justin's controlling behavior. They described how he monitored her movements, discouraged her from keeping in touch with her loved ones, and pressured her to stay under his influence. She had been trying to end the relationship, they said, but Justin resisted. Neighbors who called 911 reported hearing arguing inside the house before the gunshot. It was later revealed that the dispute had centered around $70, money Justin accused Willana of stealing. To the police, this seemed almost incomprehensible. A promising life was destroyed over a sum that small. But for investigators, the money was not really the issue, it was the control. Detectives also learned about Justin's dark history. His criminal record stretched back years, with more than 24 arrests tied to violent incidents. To the police, his willingness to speak publicly about his love of fighting and aggression, almost bragging about his inability to stay out of trouble, painted the picture of a man who thrived on dominance and volatility. And there was more. In interviews with family and friends, investigators uncovered that Willana had tried to reach out for help. Her mother, Cassandra, had 4 missed calls from her daughter earlier that day, just hours before the fatal shooting. When she returned the call, Willana never answered. The community also began to talk. On social media, Willana's cousin accused Justin of brainwashing and manipulating her, trying to separate her from her family. Others echoed that sentiment, saying Willana had been vulnerable to his promises of fame and success, but trapped by his controlling nature once she was with him. The question was no longer who had pulled the trigger. Police already had Justin in custody. The focus turned to whether this was an intentional act of murder or a reckless outburst that ended in tragedy. Soon his charges revealed the answer. Within days, Justin Wright was officially charged with first-degree murder. The severity of the charge reflected the belief that this was no accident. It was intentional, calculated, and rooted in a pattern of control and abuse. Justin was booked into the Scott County Jail, held on a $500,000 cash-only bond. The high bond amount underscored the seriousness of the crime and the risk he posed to the community. In his initial court appearance, Justin requested a court-appointed attorney, claiming he had no income and had been living out of hotels after his belongings were stolen. To observers, the irony was sharp. This was a man who had built his reputation on wealth and success, now pleading poverty as he faced the most serious charge of his life. He entered a plea of not guilty, denying responsibility for Willana's death. To her family, that denial felt like another act of cruelty. They knew she had been trying to leave him. They knew she had been calling for help, and now the man who had taken her life was refusing to even acknowledge what he had done. But the evidence was strong. Witnesses placed Justin at the scene, the murder weapon was recovered, the motive, though petty on its face, was supported by testimony about his history of controlling behavior and jealousy. Still, the legal process would take time. The preliminary hearing was set for May 20th, 2021, and the case began moving toward trial. As prosecutors prepared, they leaned heavily on Justin's history, his pattern of violence, his reputation for manipulation, and the testimony of women who had described abusive relationships with him all painted a damning picture. He wasn't just a successful songwriter, he was a man with a track record of instability and aggression. And then there was the heartbreaking testimony of Willana's parents. They described a daughter who was full of life, who forgave easily, who wanted to see the best in people, even in Justin. They believed she had stayed with him out of fear, out of hope, and out of the belief that maybe, just maybe, he would change. But the truth was much darker. This was not a man who would change. This was a man who believed control was love and violence was power. And eventually, a jury would have to decide what justice looked like for the death.
So that would have probably been her last call trying to get to me. And I'm real sick about it. She said, "Hey, Ma, happy Mother's Day. I love you and appreciate you for everything you do. Love, Bud, call me." And she told me to call her. She called me about 4 times in a row, like back to back to back to back. I think that he might have been just a little bit jealous of the relationship we had because we always called her, we always checked on her, and maybe it would help somebody else with going through domestic violence.
The trial began in April 2023 in Scott County, Iowa, nearly 2 years after the Mother's Day tragedy. Prosecutors presented the story of a young woman full of promise who had fallen into the orbit of an older, manipulative man. They laid out the sequence of events, an argument over $70 escalating into violence that ended with Willana fatally shot. Testimony from witnesses painted a devastating picture. Family members described Justin as controlling and manipulative, cutting Willana off from her loved ones. They explained that she had been trying to leave the relationship, but Justin refused to let go. One of his own cousins, present in the house that day, recalled hearing the gunshot and rushing downstairs only to find Willana's body. The prosecution also emphasized Justin's history of violence. To them, this wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong, it was part of a long-standing pattern of aggression and domination. Meanwhile, the defense attempted to downplay Justin's actions. They suggested that the shooting may not have been premeditated, arguing that emotions were high and the situation had spiraled out of control. But the facts were undeniable. Justin had retrieved a gun, pointed it at Willana, and pulled the trigger. After just 90 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Now it was time for the sentencing, and everyone waited anxiously. On June 14, 2023, the courtroom filled once again, this time for sentencing. Judge Tamara Roberts had no discretion under Iowa law. A conviction of first-degree murder carried only one sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justin stood silent as the verdict was read and the sentence was delivered. He declined to make a statement, offering no apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the life he had destroyed. For Willana's family, that silence was almost as painful as the crime itself. As he was escorted from the courtroom, his mother, overwhelmed with emotion, asked the deputy if she could say goodbye to her son. The deputy shook his head and continued walking, leading Justin away to a lifetime behind bars. For Willana's family, it was a moment of justice, but not closure. Nothing could bring back the daughter, sister, and friend they had lost, but at least the man responsible would never again walk free. The sentencing gave Willana's loved ones a chance to speak. Her father, Thomas Bibs, addressed the court directly. He said his daughter had been taken from him over something as senseless as $70, and he called Justin the very clown he had once warned his daughter about. His words carried the pain of a father who had tried to protect his child, only to see her life stolen away. Her mother, Cassandra, spoke through tears. She described Willana as her sweetheart and sweet baby,
a forgiving soul who never held grudges and believed in the good in people. She said her faith was the only thing carrying her through, but the absence of her daughter was a wound that would never truly heal. Other family members joined in, some saying they could not bring themselves to forgive Justin, while others said forgiveness was God's to give, not their own. But the common theme was grief. Grief for the young woman who had dreamed so big, and grief for the future she would never have. Willana's funeral was held in the days following her death, a heartbreaking gathering of family, friends, and community members. She was remembered as a vibrant, joyful young woman who brought light into every space she entered. Her parents chose to focus on celebrating her short but impactful life, sharing memories of her laughter, her generosity, and her determination to succeed. Loved ones described how she had been singing since childhood, her voice filling their home with hope and energy. Mourners wore colors that reflected her personality, bright and warm, and released balloons in her honor. For many, it was a way to say goodbye, but also a way to promise that her memory would not fade. A GoFundMe page was created to support funeral costs and raise awareness about domestic violence. The page quickly became a place where friends, strangers, and supporters shared condolences and pledged to honor Willana's legacy by advocating for change. To our viewers, the lesson is clear. If someone tries to isolate you from your loved ones, control your every move, or belittle your worth, that is not love, it is abuse. Those behaviors do not improve with time, they escalate. Trust your instincts, lean on your support system, and know that walking away could save your life. She was more than a victim of a crime. She was a daughter, a friend, a dreamer, and a singer with the kind of voice that should have carried her to the world's biggest stages. Instead, that voice was silenced in an instant of cruelty.